The hut on the left belongs to Mr. Alhaji, and the hut on the right belongs to Mr. Mohammed. Naturally, both families exchange visits, eat and play together, share common joys and common sorrows. Interestingly enough, both families are equally strangers if we follow strictly the rules that govern the international movement of people. A child from Mr. Alhaji's hut will need to get a passport, a visa, customs clearance before he could be able to go to Mr. Mohammed's house to borrow a spoon or a chair. The reason is very simple. Mr. Mohammed's house is in Nigeria, and Mr. Alhaji's house is in the Republic of Niger, courtesy of this dividing line between my legs. However, both families cross this line so frequently and so often, transact their businesses as if the rules that govern the movement of people between the two countries do not exist. This unchecked, unrecorded movement of both families is a small part in a larger play within Africa, especially West Africa. There's evidence to prove a very large volume of unrecorded border trade in West Africa, despite governmental controls. This trade accounts for 94% of total volume of trade. Recorded business, which the government benefits from, only accounts for 4% of total trade volume. And this is a major cause for worry. And this is the major reason for this program on recorded border trade in Africa. Africans had always had close links with one another, especially in trade. Centuries ago, Arab traders came down to sell salt and some other wares in such cities as Kano, Timbuktu, and Sokoto. Within West Africa, Nigerians had had undisturbed business and social links with citizens of its neighboring Benin Republic, Togo, and Niger. Ghanaians and Togolese intertraded and mixed easily at the Afleur border. Similar trade and social relationship existed within Africa without rancor and without let. Such was the situation until 1887, when Europeans sat at Berlin and decided to restrict the movement of Africans within boundaries created according to the white man's whims and caprice. The outcome of the Berlin Conference was the creation of the colonial state, the entrenchment of the colonial language, which of course ensured that we were adequately estranged from one another. In West Africa, for example, we have Nigerians here speaking English, but is surrounded by French-speaking neighbors. Equally, the English-speaking Ghanaians has on its left and right Francophone Togo and Côte d'Ivoire. The Portuguese-speaking citizens of Guinea-Bissau cannot easily discuss with his next-door neighbor Anglophone Gambians. Indeed,
The 16-member ECOWAS region has 3 major languages: English, French, and Portuguese. Africa as a whole is a babel of tongues imposed on the people by their colonial lords. Africa has become a fractionalized continent.
What the decimalization of Africa did by the Berlin Conference was to create enmity between hitherto good neighbors, restrict the free movement of goods and services, establish regulatory machinery to probably improve and protect the new states by the imposition of taxes and tariffs on goods and services, and of course other economic activities. In reality, this was a very, very good way of enriching the new state. But the opposite became the case. Few individuals lined their pockets with profits made from the highly illegal and profitable unrecorded border trade. The state grew poorer.
Every Tuesday, citizens from Nigeria and Niger converge in the market at Mashi in Katsina state of Nigeria to trade. Mashi is the biggest market within 50-kilometer radius of the border between Nigeria and Niger. Thousands of people troop in freely to do business and make lots of money, but they hardly pay a mite to their governments. At Mashopatoke market in a border town of Benin Republic, Nigerians and Beninois dominate business. Tremendous volume of goods and services exchange hands and enrich participants, but the governments of these countries collect little or no taxes from the people. The market situation replicates itself in almost all the border towns of the ECOWAS countries. This rope can lower easily at the sight of a smuggler's vehicle or a petroleum tanker. Human beings do not need the rope. It is through borders such as these that petroleum products from Nigeria find their way illegally and easily into neighboring countries. Here, a liter of petrol, which sells at 70 kobo in Nigeria, goes for about 6 naira. Nigeria gains nothing from the sale.
These few examples are just tiny specks in a conflagration that is engulfed West Africa called unrecorded border trade. The volume of the trade is estimated at billions of dollars a year. It accounts for 95% of total trade in the area, but the government gets nothing out of it.
Land routes create problems for the customs and immigration officials, but they're a blessing to illegal border trade, and any surface is a route provided a vehicle can go through it. The land borders are very large and very porous. Unfortunately, the customs and immigration officials do not have the means to adequately monitor the very large porous land borders within the ECOWAS region.
Nigerian borders are porous, full of illegal routes. We have no vehicles to use in mining all the illegal routes we are having.
Where vehicles cannot go, animal carriers take over. The distance is of no consequence. Danger is not important. The name of the game is profit. Big profit, as evidenced by this conversation I had with a trader.
Is this your market? Yes, it's my shop.
Where do you buy all these shoes? Where do you buy all these things?
I buy it from Nigeria.
What currency do you use to buy them?
I use Nigeria money because the thing where they inside maybe say if I want to buy the thing for this place, you know they reach me at all. I know if I buy them, I don't go fit gain. I make if I sell my market, I go Nigeria to buy all the things where I want to buy, men and women. If I buy from Nigeria, if I come here, I see my small gain. Now make I do my business inside and Nigeria. That one they pay me very well.
Heads of cattle, sometimes numbering thousands, cross borders under the pretext of grazing. Having successfully avoided or deceived customs and immigration officials, the rearers sell off the animals to traders who lie in wait for them. Now the rearers take over the heads and the animals acquire new nationality. Quite often, human load carriers take footpaths away from checkpoints to illegally traffic goods across the borders.
Like those little girls that are just going.
Speedboats are handy in riverine areas. Their ports are often obscure places like this. Although colonial masters created boundaries between people and imposed their languages, they were unable to destroy the cultural and social affinities of the border people. The umbilical relationships still remain strong.
We have common border with Niger Republic. And as I earlier told you that like Binukuka, if you go to Binukuka, you cannot even differentiate people of Niger and Nigeria because we have common, everything we do in Nigeria, they have common thing. We share the same market. Our religion is almost the same. The people, we have common language, the religion. Like Binukuka, even the imam for the Binukuka mosque, you see, he's from Niger. You see, you can find a house that half of the house is in Niger and half of the house in Nigeria. So that makes our relationship very cordial.
These elements of closeness contribute to the prosperity of unrecorded border trade as easy communications fostered by private mutual understanding and alliances. In May 1975, with the support of the Economic Commission for Africa, the ECOWAS Treaty was signed, principally to promote regional integration, which will facilitate economic development. It was envisaged that this development will be achieved through the implementation of such measures as the introduction of favorable customs and tariff within the community, introduction of free movement of persons, services, and capital, harmonization of economic and industrial policies of member states, development of necessary infrastructure, and introduction of a common currency.
It was the late Dr. Kwame Nkrumah who preached the need of an African Union to enable Africans to protect interests that are vital to them. In a sense, the bet of ECOWAS is an adherence to that sermon, where African states have formed a union to protect their interests in negotiations with the outside bloc. In Africa, there are other economic groupings like SADC, the South African Development Coordination Committee, MAO, the Maghreb Arab Union, ECAS, the Economic Community of Central African States, and the PTA, the Preferential Trade Area. Outside Africa, other examples include the European Economic Community, EEC 1992, the United States, Canada, Mexico Free Trade Area, and the ASEAN Economic Bloc.
Here in the 16 countries of ECOWAS, we are a geographical unit, and we should try much harder to become an economic unit. We have 180 million people here. We have several countries with a significant manufacturing base, Nigeria in particular, but also there is a fair amount of industrialization in the Ivory Coast as well, for example. We need to create a very strong domestic market in this region so that we can use that to compete with the rest of the world. The world is dividing up these days into economic groupings who are helping and coordinating and working together to make their own areas stronger. The EC, the Pacific Rim countries all have trade organizations which facilitate trade in their regions, and they use that as a springboard to compete economically with the rest of the world. And it's very important that here in ECOWAS we do the same thing.
In pursuit of this objective, the leaders of African nations on June 3rd, 1991, signed a treaty in Abuja, Nigeria, establishing the African Economic Community. If and only if 2/3 of all OAU member states ratify the treaty, it will lead to the adoption of common policies in trade, finance, monetary, customs, and immigration, and consequently free trade and economic union. But the realization of this noble objective depends on the two-letter word if. Because trade is without doubt very vital to economic development, nations depend on it for most of their income. This is Lagos, once Nigeria's capital city. Today it remains the most developed, the most industrialized, and the largest market in Nigeria and indeed West Africa. Abuja is Nigeria's new capital city, a city growing very rapidly. With about 89 million citizens, Nigeria is the most populous market in the ECOWAS sub-region. Its primary agricultural produce include rice, sorghum, millet, cassava, palm oil, cocoa, timber, and rubber. Nigeria's minerals include coal, tin, quartz, iron ore, batteries, gold, uranium, and many more. Petroleum is the country's most important mineral product and accounts for over 85% of its export earnings. Although Nigeria is the most industrialized ECOWAS nation, its trade in the region is less than 2% of its total export. Petroleum is its major export product to the ECOWAS nations. Small as its contribution to the ECOWAS market may be now, Nigeria remains a major factor in the growth of trade within the sub-region. Unlike Nigeria, Niger is landlocked. Its population is only 8 million, and its principal export earnings come from uranium, live cattle, and cotton. Its main agricultural produce are sorghum, millet, and groundnut.
Niger is a country which by geographical location, it's totally dependent on its neighbors for its economic survival. The country is totally landlocked and depends on its southern neighbors for its external trade. Most of its population lives near the Nigerian border. Nigeria, with its immense potential, can profit from recorded border trade. The region offers the country a vast market for its industrial products. It could also promote the export of other member states by buying their mineral and food products like it does with Guinea, Ghana, Senegal, and of course Niger. Unfortunately, most of the trade in the region is unrecorded, and this accounts for 94% of total trade volumes, which means the government only profits from 4% of the total trade in the area.
Small as the volume of recorded intra-ECOWAS trade may be, statistics show an encouraging performance in the economies of member states involved in it. Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire record relatively high trade volumes within ECOWAS as compared to their world trade. Experts attribute their success to their being within the same CFF monetary zone, which facilitates commerce. Countries like Ghana, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Liberia, and Niger exported to practically all other countries in the sub-region. The landlocked countries depend very much on imports within ECOWAS. The others not landlocked do not export much to ECOWAS, but import a substantial amount from them as well.
These statistics show that had ECOWAS stuck to its original plans and ideals, there would have been a boom in recorded trade in the region. Rather, the economies in the region are in such status today. ECOWAS' high expectations failed. Its major problems being lack of dynamic leadership to direct the affairs of the community. The interests of the community were at times at variance with the interests of the member states, followed by the lack of development of the institutions of the community. The community was poorly staffed to actually meet the increasing needs made on it by member states. The member states were not up to date in their budgetary contributions, so the community lacked in programs. For example, the vital trade information system, ASECUDA, that is very essential in a trade liberalization process, was only installed in 1991, 16 years after the idea was bought. So of course you can see that ECOWAS was in no position to actually promote recorded trade in the region.
Between 1987 and 1991, two schemes which will lead to an ECOWAS single monetary zone and a common monetary authority by 1994 were approved. The first was the establishment of the West African Clearing House to promote monetary cooperation among member states. The use of national currencies by clearing house in intra-community transactions caused loss of credibility in the house and loss of patronage. Consequently, the transactions handled by the clearing house fell from 224.40 million in 1983-1984 season to a May 28.22 million 5 years later. Cumbersome documentation of the clearing house, its paucity in getting adequate information and trade opportunities, the underdeveloped nature of banking and financial systems in the sub-region, and many others made the clearing house ineffective. Meanwhile, unrecorded border trade is very successful and the government purses grow thinner.
There is a large amount of unrecorded trade which at the present time is not bankable, but we hope that in the course of time that trade barriers will come down within the ECOWAS region, and that a lot of this trade, which is currently unrecorded, will then become bankable.
Incidentally, there are avenues for intra-community business that could be beneficial to governments and nationals that have not been properly tapped. One is trade fairs, held many times a year in Lagos and Kaduna in Nigeria, as well as in many other ECOWAS countries.
This is the 12th Lagos International Trade Fair, a major forum for businesses in the ECOWAS region, where businessmen could come and exchange views and ideas on the sort of businesses that are available in the region, on trade, on finance, on commonly traded goods and services in the region. This happens once a year, and it's advantageous for all ECOWAS businessmen and traders to come here and exchange views on goods and services.
The other is special transnational financial institutions like the EcoBank.
This is EcoBank. In full, it's called EcoBank Incorporated. It was set up by the West African Chambers of Commerce and Industry. It has subsidiaries in Côte d'Ivoire, in Benin, in Togo, and of course in Nigeria.
The main purpose of our group is to intermediate trade within the ECOWAS region, to provide financing and trade facilitation services for trade within the ECOWAS region.
You have a transfer. If you're doing any business in Abidjan, I'm sure you realize that there's a lot of risk in carrying cash around. But we have the advantage that within 24 hours you should be able to transfer whatever money you want from Lagos to Abidjan or vice versa.
Based on its considerable experience with commerce in Group 1 ECOWAS countries, that is the most developed within the community, it could act as a viable alternative to the West African clearinghouse system. That expectation is based on its success so far. ECOWAS should also encourage the active participation of insurance companies, mortgage institutions, banks in the development of intra-community trade in the community. That will not only stimulate the development of a capital market, but encourage the formalization of trade across the borders, and that will diminish the importance of unrecorded trade within the community.
At present, one cannot overlook the importance and powerful nature of illegal border trade. The population of the traders, especially the women, increases by the day. They seem to have complete grips of the business and are waxing stronger each day. The goods involved in the trade increase in volume and variety, ever passing sun. New border markets get born more regularly. The intriguing aspect is that this illegal trading is done very much in the open, despite the existence of customs and immigration offices in these areas. Unfortunately, even if these officials see and know what is happening, there's little they can do.
Lack of infrastructure. If you look around, you see that there's no fence. And again, we lack vehicles to pursue motors inside the bush. And again, we need strong weapons to attack all the smugglers. And again, we need this border need to be fenced fully in order to check the moving out of both the passengers and the vehicles.
You don't have savings?
No.
You have dollars?
No.
How many other set of currencies do you change?
Cameroon, we don't change dollar safe, but no debt with me.
But the one you change most is Naira, from CFA to Naira. So change this for me, please.
Okay. This one now is 40. 43. 43.
An interesting dimension to the border trade is the easy convertibility of the local currencies, especially the naira. While the West African Clearinghouse suffers from problems of credibility and patronage because it uses local currencies for business, the traders use the same currencies successfully and gainfully. The naira especially has been found to be a strong currency in not just this illegal border trade, but in the region.
Money flows to the strong economy. So when you talk about internationally why the dollar is strong and is a medium of exchange at the international level, or the pound, you can see that the same thing is what the same logic is what being followed by the locals who find the naira and use the naira and prefer the naira as far away as Mali. The reason is that there is faith in the Nigerian economy.
Our recorded border trade is as real as life itself and as strong as you can imagine. What is required at the moment is to find ways of utilizing these markets and integrating them into a system that will be very beneficial to the government.